The story begins by saying that nothing special happened before this. It's one of those mobile games. The most generic type, with an automatic system that doesn't even need explanation. His name was Gift of Miracle, and the real question is, why was this guy playing this game? Because he's a man of culture, and clearly the waifus were great even though he liked them. Even though he loved the game, he hadn't spent a dime and hadn't even finished it. But then he got pulled into the game. And not as one of the playable characters, not even as an NPC. He became that tiny figure in the background, standing still and all alone. He transformed into a completely unknown random character, and his name here is Kang Jama. He accidentally bumps into a blue-haired girl. He gets scared when he realizes she's a woman. Clearly, he's got some kind of trauma. He's turning around and asks if you're okay. The girl says she's fine and apologizes for the trouble. Our boy's luck is that this game takes place in Korea. The names, places, and geography were very similar. This allowed him to adapt easily and live as an ordinary teenager for nearly a year. In this place, you can't even tell if this reality is a game or not. And he lives an ordinary life like everyone else. When she gets home, her mother says she's the pride of her clan. He is showing her an acceptance letter. He was admitted to the Draken Academy. He says he already knows this and wants them to stop talking about it constantly. Meanwhile, his family, and I think it's his mother though her face is blurred, keeps saying he's the pride of the family. The entrance ceremony was supposed to be tomorrow. And they were all excited. They were asking if you were ready. He says he'll hurry, and there's the dream of living a modest life. It's completely gone. Sitting in his chair, he thinks about how tomorrow is the day, and with everyone expecting so much from him, there's no way out. She asked countless times if he could quit, but it didn't work. Looking at the photo, thinking about how tired they are. In theory, everything is the real Kang Ji-young's fault before him. This boy had managed to get accepted into this prestigious school. As soon as she arrived, she learned from the kid's family that he passed the exam. Shortly before he took over this body. Of course, the family doesn't know it's taken over his body, but ours has no excuse, and considering everything. Given how hard it is to get into this academy, she wonders if the boy is a genius or perhaps blessed with special talents. It's a very similar concept to what you find in games. But not all people have this kind of divine protection. Because most powers are genetic. From the start, they depend on the presence or absence of blessings, and society separates the ranks. Nobility, as common and privileged. This is how the elites maintain their power. A Draken Academy was established to train heroes. But it's always been exclusive to the most important families. Until a special admission system was recently introduced, and GM Hakong was one of the few admitted through it. The reason is clear. Maybe it's because they need new heroes, maybe it's because of the monsters. But he needs to start remembering that this isn't his own reality. This was a training school designed to prepare for war. It's very different from enlisting in the army. So he lazily starts talking about his grace. A window appears. He's mumbling about how weird this status window always is. It showed that he had the grace to numb the pain for 30 seconds. He wouldn't feel any pain, but the waiting period was 12 hours. Disappointed, he says this talent will be useless. It's almost depressing to see that this is all he has. But he also has a blessing received when he took over this body. Blessing of the Sword God. The effect is quite simple. If he attacks, he'll cut. No activation limit, but it only works with knives. Shorter than 30 centimeters and narrower than 5 centimeters. Even though he hadn't finished the game, he knew many skills and had never heard of this before. Besides, its effect of cutting when you attack was simple enough, but the most striking thing was the activation condition. A sword shorter than 30 centimeters. Thinking about it, he imagines it's exactly the size of a right shimmy knife. Looking at all this, he has no idea about what they expect from him, but life doesn't always go the way you want. And now, they've completed the preparations for this. Not really, because he just remembered he needs to bring the equipment. He knows even an E-rank weapon costs millions, and anything above C-rank is worth hundreds of millions. By the way, A and S ranks are priceless treasures. The thing is, just being in this school costs a fortune, and she can't keep asking her parents for more money. The thing is, they require you to bring your own equipment. So he's got to bring something. He decides to stop by a random shop. At this point, whatever works. At least he remembers that Japanese knives are known for their sharpness. Besides, a master shouldn't blame his tools. The scene cuts to someone calling him a brat. He asks exactly what she brought. Ours stands there awkwardly, surrounded by a bunch of store-bought sashimi knives. With sashimi knives? It's weapon analysis day during the induction ceremony. They know those without good gear will be targeted and bullied by the wealthier students. By students. The evaluator slams the table and asks if he thinks this academy is a joke. Why did this brat bring a bunch of kitchen knives to this place? Kang says seriously that these are his own equipment. The professor shouts at the student in disbelief, but our guy tells him to calm down. He explains that he was accepted under the new special system and his family has no money for equipment. Our boy wears the badge that clearly shows he doesn't come from a wealthy family. To her, this is nonsense. For a professor at an educational institution where everyone should be treated equally to be this biased. He adds that, in the end, only amateurs blame their equipment. According to him, an expert doesn't blame the weapon. The professor is impressed by the boy's wise words and confidence. To him, this unwavering spirit is incredible, and so he approves the student Kang's admission. Ours would just say thank you. Meanwhile, some people in the background overhear the special admission and don't look very happy. Those sour-faced jerks might even say you stink like a corpse. But the professor just tells everyone to shut up and leave. Based on what they said right after the evaluation, it could have been an angel or a demon. Ours just runs away. Run for it to avoid these crazies. The day has only just begun outside, and he's already asking for a break. He was expecting this kind of judgment, but experiencing it still doesn't feel good. At least he passed the evaluation, and now there's just the class proficiency exam. But it's gone too far now. He knows he'll have to attend this school for the next 3 years. When you look around, it's completely different from what you see on the screen. If he were to exaggerate, he'd say it's the size of a small city, and he admits the school is at least pretty cool. He remembers. It feels surreal knowing this is actually happening, since he had to give up his shares back then for family reasons. Then, they announce the start of the exams over the PA system and instruct the new students to gather in the training area. She thinks everything is moving too fast. But an exam is an exam, and she's determined to give it her all, except for forgetting one thing. Just a small detail. He hasn't used a knife since he came into this world, so there's nothing he can do, but he remembers that the professor told him not to let go of the knife even for a second. Our boy thinks a 1-year break won't make a difference after working for 20 years. What is this? The kid was only 2 years old. Was he cutting my hair? He strokes the back of the knife and says it's not that bad. First, he'll try cutting it with a knife. He draws the blade from its sheath, surrounded by a blue aura. Equipment requirements met. Sword God's blessing activated. However, the user's physical body was very short. The equipment level was also very low. So suppression would be used to sync the equipment to it. Ours is just impressed that simply drawing it from its sheath activates the skill. It says level 1 activation is complete, and the system wishes him the God's grace. She feels something approaching and begins to scream in pain. He realizes that whatever is happening will kill him at this rate. An explosion occurs, and the child creates a rift and a digital portal. What is this? He's just as shocked as we are and drops the knife. This is probably the right move. Reality seems to be splintering, and he's heading back to school. The moment he drops the knife, he notices everything returns to normal. So what kind of disaster was happening? The problem now is his head feels like it's going to split open. He realizes the talent is active, but why is this so-called grace of the gods tearing the world apart? And the intense pain he's in right now feels like the price of using that talent. If every activation is going to feel like this, it means he won't be able to use it. The announcement system continues, calling students to gather in the training area. He wonders if he can pick up the knife by looking at the ground. He doesn't want to leave her there, abandoned in the middle of nowhere. He hesitates, but then takes it by the hilt. But the moment she picks it up, she feels a jolt. Like lightning, and it's screaming again. The scene moves to the training hall. This is the middle of a coliseum full of people. It looks like these are nobles talking about their children starting school, and then they look to the side. One has arrived, the Sword Emperor, Siegfried von Nibelink. What a name, huh? It turns out he's a direct descendant of someone named Aaron Nibelink. Of a legendary hero. A chubby guy with messy hair says Siegfried is the strongest man alive. Siegfried bows his head and looks aside. Medea Poison is here. What a poisonous name. Now we see why our dear Kang is so obsessed with this game. Siegfried is asking whether half a century had passed since they last saw each other. He comments on her outfit at the academy and asks a question. Whether he's gone senile at 70. She says every woman wants to stay beautiful forever. And he offers to use his power to make her 10 years younger. But he says he hasn't matured even at 70 and values character above everything else. She laughs, saying he's just like he was half a century ago, but gently notes his presence here means things have changed. She usually hates mingling with the elite. Maybe he's looking after his grandson who's here. Siegfried ignores the comment. It just indicates that something is about to start. The artist has decided. Yu-Gi-Oh! To everyone. Delivering professional level hairstyles. Meanwhile, our boy is standing there with his straight black hair. Wondering if he's the only one with normal hair. Everyone's talking about how she became a special admission student. So this is what it's like coming from humble beginnings, huh? Suddenly a flash goes off from behind, and everyone starts whispering. Now he wonders who has arrived. Look, the blue-haired girl is here. He already knew that she was studying here. Abel von Nibelung, the grandson of the sword god himself, and more importantly, the reason the protagonist is hooked is a hot and devious babe. The story explains the existence of subspace, a realm separate from reality. His attacks feel so real. And you feel all the pain. But since it doesn't interfere with reality, even murder is permitted there. Does the Medea toxin go all the way? Calm down, Arts. What's about to happen is a battle royale inside this subspace. Participants will be split into groups of 10, and rankings will be based on survival. Medea announces there will be no equipment restrictions. And Siegfried points out that this gives the rich an advantage. And he says they're the ones funding the academy, so they need some kind of advantage. He says creating the special admission system was already a major challenge for him. And is blushing in the crowd. It was beautiful in 2D, but now just looking at it from a distance shakes it up. When she sees the guys around here, she feels sorry for them. Because he knows the game. Abel von Nibelung, a player with miraculous grace. In other words, there's finally another hero connected to him. Good people always have someone waiting for them, and our special foster child has no chance at all. So it's best not to get involved. His goal is to live a peaceful, ordinary, and safe life, finish school smoothly, and work at an ordinary job. Then he sees in the paper that heroes always earn the highest salaries. But just remembering the pain of pulling out that knife, he realizes it's impossible for him. Those heroes can protect the world. But he's aiming for a nice, comfortable desk job. A crystal in the sky suddenly announces this year's Draken Academy exam. Wait a minute, when did he become Draken? What's going on? Crystal explains that the exam will be a battle royale. The last survivor will earn star rank, second and third place will get dragon rank, fourth to seventh will get wolf rank, and 8th to 10th will be rated as ordinary trash. Scoring will be automatic, and there was no time limit. Our boy notices this is just like in the game. The goal is to finish as fast as possible by staying low-key and ordinary. At that moment, the robot starts emitting a blue energy, announcing the start of the exam. May the grace of heroes be with you. Our guy wants to avoid drawing his weapon at all costs. In the next scene, almost everyone is lying on the ground defeated. 24 groups have finished, and the top rankings are being announced. Some creep says this year feels like an injustice. The grandson is competing alongside descendants of the Shang and Zhu families. So the results were predictable. It's clear Abel finished the match in 7 minutes and 14 seconds, yet it didn't break his grandfather's record. It's still one of the Academy's top 10 times. Siegfried says it's natural for a descendant of the Nibelungs to have such a talent. But now that the work is done, he's leaving. Abel is asking if you'd like to watch the other nobles. But he brushes them off as just a bunch of pigs. Humility. He doesn't like nobles at all. Normal. He fought the war, he has the moral authority, and now he's just leaving. But then they both flinch, and everyone is shocked. A strange energy spreads through the area, and Abel asks if she can feel it too. Siegfried looks at the crowd and begins to panic. You can't tell where it's coming from. Something catches their attention. A blue light appears in the sky. Looking up, they see space starting to shatter, with fragments falling among the students and exploding. People ask if someone fell from an alternate space. The sky glows once more, and Siegfried is seen watching. A small knife falls in front of someone. Media orders the paramedics to be called and tells the cadets to help them. And who is that in your bed? Yes, you guessed it right, it's our boy. The outcome is already clear. A blonde kid shouts, saying he's gonna take that bastard down. But someone else grabs him by the throat. The blonde takes a punch to the face, and that's when Kang realizes he's in a battle royale. The June family brothers are notorious for their cruelty. Kang is horrified to see that instead of killing people outright, they are torturing them. They had been torturing them for over 30 minutes. Doesn't she understand why they left her alone? So weak it's not even worth fighting? The brother holding the blonde by the throat asks if she's dead or not. Throws someone else to the ground and starts complaining. He says it's getting boring, starts counting the rest, looks at his brother and says he's killing too fast, telling him he needs to slow down. Then he steps on someone else and crushes them. He apologizes sarcastically and says that's one person less. He points to a girl and tells his brother he can take her to have some fun. It's clear the girl is hiding nearby in terror. Kang doesn't know what to do. When the torture began, everyone panicked, but it didn't change these brothers' behavior. The brother in red starts walking toward the girl. He comments that she's exactly his type and says he's already imagining the screams that will come out of her mouth. The brother in blue calls him a creep, even though they're brothers. But the sibling in red insists on tearing the girl to pieces. Suddenly someone yells, "Fucking bastards!" This is Kang, asking them if they're psychopaths. Even if this is a separate space, what they've done is too much. The brothers ignore his words and wonder who this new guy is. She soon became his private student, before long. It looks like the girl is back to reality. Red brother, this is for that insult. He adds that he'll start by tearing out Kang's tongue. Kang panics, not knowing what to do. He could have used the pain override, but it only lasts 30 seconds, and these guys have been here for half an hour. Then he thinks of something. The hairbrush in her bag. The problem is, he knows the ability will activate the moment he touches it, but it's his only option. The brothers flinch when he pulls out the knife glowing with a blue aura. Kang thought they'd be afraid, but instead, they're laughing at him. They're asking if you're joking with that. Lucky for Kang, the girl is still alive. The red brother, laughing. He says since you're so fun, your death will be as painless as possible. Then he rushes forward, claiming he will crush Kang's head. Kang activates his ability to remove pain for 30 seconds. At least combined with the other blessing, this might be his only chance of victory. He starts to draw the blade, and the blessing activates instantly. The red brother, still mocking him, asks what he plans to do with the kitchen knife. Kang knows it's now or never. It will either be cut or killed. The problem is, this isn't a fish, it's a human body. It remembers you being curious. Why gangsters in movies always use switchblades. They really were cutting right through people. His boss at the time told him it was impossible. But Kang knows the blessing's description says if he attacks, he'll be cut. The blade slices through, and the chubby brother watches in horror as his arm flies through the air. The severed limb hits the ground with a loud thud. Flashback to a scene in the kitchen. Kang once asked a gangster to eat my hair, and a knife got stuck in the wall. It scared him, and his master shouted, "Call me master!" He wondered why Kang cared so much about this. Turns out Kang's first teacher was an ex-gangster. The man cut off one of his own hands as punishment for his past crimes. But Kang, clueless as always, was asking questions about scenes he'd seen in movies. He wondered if things were like that in real life too. His master explained how the skin and organs contract when you stab someone. That's why he said it's easier to stab someone repeatedly than to make a single clean cut. He also explained why the fish were sliced. Laid down carefully, you can't even tear a piece of bread while standing upright. When Kang suggested the master might not be talented enough, he got slapped again. The master claimed this was impossible. But now that your chubby brother's arm has flown off, maybe it wasn't that impossible after all. The severed arm hits the ground, and the brother claps his stump, screaming in pain. As Kang walks calmly, he has no idea what just happened. His brother runs toward him, screaming for help in a panic, but the one in red stands frozen. The fear on your face is clear. The brother in red rushes forward, shouting that he'll cut the kid down, but Kang makes another move and slices him cleanly like paper. The brother on the ground watches in shock as the other is sliced. Looking down, he sees a piece of his brother's head staring back at him. His brother calls out to Kuma and screams. Meanwhile, Kang stands in silence. A red-haired observer watching from the sidelines is clearly stunned. The brother in blue tries to pull himself together, thinking they're in the void dimension, but still, who is this kid? Worse yet, looking at his technique, he seems like a total amateur. Maybe it was beginner's luck or a strange coincidence, but one thing is certain, he must be careful with that knife. Concluding he lost due to his brother's recklessness, he equips a defensive grace. And equips another one that increases jump by 200%. It also activates a spirit damage bonus for his punches. With these three powers manifesting at once, Kanga declares it time to show his true power. Even if Kang didn't know where he got that knife, he thought even a level 1 weapon couldn't hurt his fists. Meanwhile, Kang stands still, counting the seconds. It's 21. The brother in blue lunges at him, saying he's different from the other one. He says he'll crush Kang's head if he keeps standing still. But suddenly the time drops to 5 seconds, and Kang can't figure out what's happening. Kang only used him as target practice for throwing knives. The brother in blue is left stunned before he can even realize what happened. After 2 seconds, 1 second remains. Eventually, he loses consciousness. Right then, the grace wears off, and Kang begins to scream in pain. After a while, Kang opens his eyes. He is in an unfamiliar place that looks like a hospital. As he stands up, a blond boy opens the door and runs out, announcing that the student is awake. Someone enters, and Kang recognizes the face immediately. Not personally, but through stories. The man before him destroyed the Demon Lord's Legion 50 years ago. He is one of the 7 heroes of the 7 stars. Humanity's strongest man, Academy Principal Siegfried. Greetings to Madia. Kang wonders why both of them are here. Siegfried asks for his name, and Kang introduces himself. Siegfried asks Kanga point-blank what he did during the test. Even if Kang himself isn't sure, it's clear that he's the one who caused all this. Kang notices Siegfried's hand resting on the hilt of his sword. He stood no chance against such a monster. Kang nervously says he knows he went too far during the assessment, and says he is ready to face the consequences. Siegfried is just watching her. Madia steps in and tells Siegfried to stop scaring the child. He approaches Kang and explains that he cleared Siegfried's meridians while he was unconscious, adding that she's also interested in Kang. Siegfried scolds Madia for being so familiar with a new student. Kang is completely confused. He wonders why the swordsman is helping him, and why Madia is being so close. Why? Madia explains that she watched the test footage while he was unconscious. She says seeing him risk everything to protect another student really moved her. She's literally swooning over him, calling him a hero. Siegfried tells him once again to take it easy. Madia turns to Kanga and says they won't punish him for today's actions. But he adds that 2 brothers from the Mao family seem ready to drop out of school. Even if Kang is a bit confused, he's relieved he won't have to be in the same room as those 2. Then Siegfried mentions he has something important to tell her. In this assessment, the best student was Kang Jama. Kanga is falling. His goal was to live a calm and quiet life without drawing attention. A while later in Madia's office, Madia is thinking. He admits that in his nearly 20 years as Academy president, this is the first time such a thing has happened. Our boy says he doesn't like this whole top student thing. Naturally, Both Siegfried and Madia are confused. They're asking if you understand what it means to be part of the star class. According to their explanation, the decision was made by subspace itself. A moment later, Kang says he still doesn't want to accept it. Siegfried was confused. Returning to Madia's office, she asks Siegfried if he's angry about the boy taking his grandson's place. He says it's pointless to resist the will of subspace, which is designed to find heroes. If Kang were chosen as the top student, they would respect that decision. The problem was, if Kang had incredible talents, he would have realized. If Kang had an extraordinary physique, he would have accepted. And if Kang had brought an extraordinary experience, he would have settled. But Kang was just a boy who hadn't fully matured yet. It was undeniable that his slashes and movements showed a master-level understanding of swordsmanship. This was something Siegfried had searched for his whole life. Even more shocking, when Siegfried examined Kang's body, he saw it was fragile and out of shape. There were no signs of physical training. It felt as if something impossible was inside. For the first time in a while, Siegfried felt a strange sense of competitiveness. He wanted to understand how this was possible. The problem was, he just couldn't wrap his head around it. How a child the same age as his grandson could have those kinds of skills. As for Medea, with her usual weird attitude, she joked that maybe something was worth a try despite Kang's age. Siegfried asked for your opinion. Then she asked if he knew what people at the academy called women like her. The media challenged her to say it out loud. Siegfried spelled it out syllable by syllable. BITCH media went crazy. But now we're going back to Kanga. It looks like he's managed to demote himself to the wolf class. That was the best you could do. Because all he wanted was to avoid being the top student. Not long ago, there was a heated debate about it. It's about placing him in one of the best classes, at least the Tiger class, but the media insisted on keeping it secret. Kang's plan? It was to join a weaker class, live quietly, and avoid the power struggles of stronger groups. Considering everything that's happened, ending up in the wolf class wasn't so bad. When he entered the classroom, everyone turned and looked at him. It was clearly because of the badge on his chest. A moment later they returned to their conversation, and Kang relaxed, hoping they would stop looking at him. All they wanted was to sitting down, pleased that no one spoke to him. He felt the peace of being a lone man with his own lifestyle. Then someone called out to her. When he turned around, he saw the red-haired girl from before. She thanked him for everything he did. When Kang didn't answer, she explained she was talking about the test. He was speaking in a formal tone. It felt unnecessary since they were the same age. Kang told her not to thank him, saying anyone would have done the same. At that moment, he felt like a hypocrite. Everyone thought he saved the girl to be a hero, but he was just trying to save himself. He introduced himself as Kang Jama, and the girl introduced herself as Chloe. Kang politely said he was pleased to meet you, and added that she didn't expect to be in the same class. But inside, he wondered who Chloe was. Despite playing the game countless times, he had no idea who this girl was. Anna knew the main story began later, during the war against the demon tribe. If Chloe isn't showing up there, then she was just an ordinary person like him. He asked the girl to keep everything a secret, and she agreed. Then Chloe said she wanted to ask him something, but the professor interrupted and told everyone to take their seats. They agreed to talk later. The professor slammed a notebook on the table and congratulated them for accepting the class. He announced they now carry the pride of the hero Valadokin. He introduced himself. As Wolf class instructor Lee Van Bin, he ordered everyone to put on their PE uniforms. Practice was starting in 30 minutes. A boy with glasses asked what the purpose of today's training was. Kang predicted the answer before it was even said. Saitama's training. He wondered if that meant everyone would go bald. Kang approached the instructor. The instructor immediately asked what Kang Jama wanted. He couldn't figure out how she knew Instructor Kang's name. She said she wasn't feeling well. The professor thought for a moment. He noted that such a basic workout might not be very useful for the school's top student. And instead, he suggested that Kang go to the star class. Kang immediately realized what Medea had told all the instructors. She immediately smoothed things over by saying he just needed to use the restroom. When practice started outside, Kang began running with the others. Or rather, he's behind them because he's out of shape. He was struggling, and he hadn't even finished warming up yet. Chloe caught up to him and asked if it was really that hard. Kang denied it, insisting that he was fine. If he had made proper progress, he would have finished 5 laps by now. But the girl said she was already on her 9th lap. The poor guy was stunned. The girl just told him to keep trying and ran ahead. He never imagined he'd be this unprepared. Later, after practice, surrounded by empty bottles at home, he slammed one down on the table. The poor guy was exhausted and starving. After spending just a week at the academy, he faced an unexpected problem. The scene shifts to the cafeteria. He came in desperately, said he was starving, and asked for pork. But the woman at the counter looked aside and asked where the food voucher was. That's when he realized he needed a voucher to get food. He told the woman not to worry and that he would go get one. But seeing the minus 50k price, he was crushed. Now he sat there, drinking whatever he could afford. Leaning against the wall, he was annoyed that this place charged so much for food. That was almost as much as he used to spend. It was as much as he spent in a whole month to survive. Suddenly, a system notification arrived stating his physical stats reached level 12. The more power he gained, the fewer restrictions would be applied. Also, it could now use a weapon up to 38 centimeters long. It made him realize his efforts were in vain. When looking in the mirror, he noticed his body becoming more defined. Its evolution was advancing rapidly. Probably thanks to the sword god's grace, as its effects increase. Maybe he'd soon be able to use a small sword. On his ceremony day, he was afraid to use a sword, but now he felt strange without one. He started to wonder if he was playing with this system's head. Just then, someone knocked on the door, and he opened it. And asked who it was. Green Chloe politely asked if she could come in. Must be him. He asked if he was disturbing her, and she said no since she was just lying down. Chloe said she hasn't seen him in the cafeteria all week and wonders if he's okay. And he said he was fine. He explained that he brought the food from other places. Chloe said she understood, and he told her not to worry. The girl explained that she planned to cook dinner later and wanted to buy ingredients. But the boy didn't seem very interested. But the very next moment, he was already outside telling her to hurry up. Walking ahead, he noted that he could cook and would take care of it. Some time passed, and the girl had already finished her meal. He was praising how delicious it was. The boy noticed that all the food was gone. He said he checked the fridge and found a lot of fish. They asked curiously why there were so many. The girl explained that she lived near the beach, and he said that was perfect. Since his specialty was cooking fish, he decided to prepare another dish to showcase his sashimi skills. The problem was the sword god's blessing. He asked the girl if she had a long knife that looked like a sword. The girl showed him her sword and asked if it would work. So he shrugged it off and decided to handle it differently. He concluded he had to finish this in 30 seconds. Activating pain relief and sword god's blessing, he managed to prepare the fish. Prepared it completely in just 21 seconds. Even he was impressed by the masterpiece he created. She asked how I got so good at cooking. She said she worked part-time at a Japanese restaurant. But it's like the girl didn't even know what part-time work was. Noticing the social status gap between them, he said he was just glad she enjoyed the meal. The girl told him not to worry about the dishes. He was going to handle them himself. He went out to watch the moon. Right then, after a week of hard work, he felt completely satisfied. But a loud noise came from inside. Looking back, he saw Chloe clearly hadn't washed dishes before, when suddenly a book fell from the shelf, opened to some pages, and realizing it looked like a diary, he accidentally started reading. The diary entry for today said she got help from someone in class and felt she had to return the favor. Thinking it was cute that she had a sticker-covered diary at her age, he unintentionally turned the pages and read another line. It said the person who saved her was in her class, and now her heart was racing uncontrollably. He wanted to talk to her but didn't know how to do it. Kang thought she'd be embarrassed, but instead, he found it really cute. Now he was curious and decided to read a bit more. When she turned another page, she found a bunch of "I love you" notes. It was everywhere, Holy cow, he thought maybe it was time to run. Just then, Chloe saw what he saw. She dropped her glass and asked if I was reading. The story then shifts to Chloe's family background, where hero families gain honor by slaying monsters. But within these institutions, there are always those who exploit the weak to handle problems other families can't resolve directly. A family known as Cecilia emerged as a shadow organization. This family used assassination to maintain order. That's why children born into the family underwent mental conditioning before puberty. They were suppressing their emotions. And they all endured rigorous training to become assassins before turning 15. That was the age Chloe killed for the first time. An old man told him he shouldn't deny his talent as an assassin. This was something she'd heard many times before reaching adulthood. Constant training had warped his mind and cast a shadow over his heart. Before he could even recover, it was already time to enter the academy. Any child from the Cecilia family would undoubtedly qualify for Dragon class or higher. But they would always fall into the ordinary classes at the lower levels. Because of family tradition. The old man warned him never to draw attention to himself. That's when Chloe realized that even at the academy, she couldn't just act however she wanted. He decided to accept his family's fate. Since there was no escape, he thought everything here would be predictable until someone showed up. Our boy yelled at those bastards to stop and asked if they'd lost their minds in hyperspace. Chloe had to taste death for the first time. He wasn't afraid, knowing it was part of a weak plan to keep him back. He was ready to face death calmly because that's how he'd always lived. But fate, which seemed so clear and certain. That's when it snapped. It felt like the sun had peeked through the clouds. At that moment, he saw someone. One who swings their sword for a purpose beyond themselves. He was standing in front to protect her. He used to read one as a kid. A bedtime story about a princess trapped in a castle and the person she loves. His face turned red right then. And his heart felt like it would burst. He could only think of one thing. Is this what they call love? Back to the present, Kang was confused. The tension in the air was palpable. And as they looked at each other, he felt strange. He didn't know what to do or why the girl looked so sad. He said how beautiful the moon was that night, trying to change the mood. He thanked for the meal and said he was leaving. As the boy waved goodbye, the girl asked if he'd seen her. When I asked what she meant, the girl said, "The obvious." Embarrassed, he stammered that if she was talking about the book, he hoped she was studying hard. But the girl knew it was his diary. Kang wondered why this girl was so tense. The problem was, at that moment, the girl looked like a completely different person. Even as the boy insisted he saw nothing, the girl kept pressing him to stop lying. After snacking for a while, he admitted what he saw. The moment he confesses. As Chloe began to draw her sword, she felt the air change. Kang was stunned, wondering why he had done this. Looking out the window, he realized he was on the 4th floor. And that made jumping impossible. The only way out was the door. But he was trapped in the room with the girl. What he couldn't understand at that moment. Why did he act like that? As the girl slowly advanced, dragging her sword on the ground, Kang noticed her lifeless eyes and fixed pupils. Not a trace of emotion on his face. Now he was sure that she was a Yandere. It hit him during their conversation. The girl's energy would change suddenly. Now that she's acting completely different, it's obvious she has 2 personalities. Reading the diary triggered this behavior. And his intent to kill him was even stronger than those brothers. Kang started thinking of an escape route. Since he cut the fish in 21 seconds, he still had 9 seconds of the grace effect left to use. The problem is, the sashimi knife was in his room. The knife he used on the fish was nearby, but the girl's current. In that position, he would have taken his arm or head off before closing that knife. Then he saw a utility knife on the table. At that moment, Chloe pounced on her. As Kang grabbed the utility knife, he wished he could have settled this through talk. He activated the sword deity's blessing, and a voice said, "May the blessing be with you." Kang said your hair was a bit long while Chloe was attacking. It made a clean cut, and in the next scene, Chloe was sprawled on the floor. When he woke up, he asked in confusion. Asking where Jama is, while washing dishes, he remembered looking at the Jayamoya by the window. He was curious. He noticed where his katana was and then that it was nearby. He remembered that when he used the katana while relaxed, he often lost consciousness. Most of the time, after killing someone, all he remembered was an old man praising him and telling him never to deny his talent as an assassin. Since she fainted while he was in the room, she collapsed headfirst onto her pillow in frustration. His head felt like it was going to explode. He wondered if Chloe let anything strange slip while she was unconscious. That's when he noticed the box cutter on the floor and wondered what it was doing there. She touched her hair and realized it was shorter. He was totally confused. When he looked in the trash, he saw the hair she had cut off. As an unstable yandere, he interpreted this as a gesture of courtesy. She thought he was incredibly kind for cutting her hair. She immediately opened her diary and started writing about how much she loved Jayamoyu. Meanwhile, she saw Khan outside. He somehow managed to get away with it by activating the grace. The problem was his talent. He used 5 seconds more than the 9 remaining, which completely exhausted it. Sitting on a bench, he thought about how all the energy from dinner just vanished. He started to wonder why Chloe fought that way. Normally, a swordsman would aim to disarm or disable their opponent. However, Chloe's fighting style made it crystal clear that her intent was always to kill without hesitation. With his attacks, he was aiming for vital points. He was almost like an ambush expert. When the girl attacked him, Khan felt my life was truly in danger. Instinctively, he tried to take its head off. Luckily, the box cutter was very short. And the result was just a haircut. Afterwards, the girl seemed to faint and Khan was grateful that everything finally worked out. Life at the academy wasn't easy at all. Khan remembered being much more ambitious before falling for this game. In his original world, he was at the peak as a master barber, but in this world, it felt like everyone was trapped in their own roles. The game was called the Grace of Miracles because it is a grace. It was the blessing a true hero would receive. Khan also had a blessing of courage from someone named Belo Joaquin. As far as he could remember, these were the only legendary blessings and main quests in the game. To save the world from the Demon King, the protagonist was chosen by the Holy Sword and the Demon Sword known as Balmont. Meanwhile, Khan had been chosen by a hair blade. He slapped himself, trying to understand how he ended up in this situation. All these events at the academy were making him forget his actual goals. And even though he knew a bit about the key characters, he didn't fully understand how this world worked. All he knew was that he'd been at the academy for a week. And according to the game's story, it was finally time. The main character's grace should have activated by now, and he was about to start academy life. This meant the real story was about to begin. Even if Khan hadn't finished the game, he knew at least the first half. For now, the best course of action was to stick to the official story. If you remember correctly, major events were going to break out in the second half of the 3rd year. At that point, sensing the birth of a new hero, the demon race would launch an attack on the academy. This war would turn into a full-scale battle between demons and humanity. That's when a world war would break out. It was undeniable that the story was incredibly cliché. Playing only for waifus and fun, Kang decided to quit the game right at this stage of the story. But the terrifying part was that war was inevitable in this world. Now the real question was whether he would die in the process. At least for now, he had 3 days to prepare. He would either find a way to escape this fantasy world or, at the very least, grow stronger and survive. It was a game full of waifus, made for people to enjoy. That's why there just had to be a happy ending somewhere. The main character of this world would surely survive, but Kanjin needed power to protect himself. At the same time, he shouldn't draw too much attention or he'd be recruited to fight against the Demon King's army. Today's events made King realize he had to be much more careful. He checked his stats while using Bitter Grace and saw that his performance was quite impressive. Strangely, more information seemed to appear on the interface every day. Some stats like mental power were clear enough, but one confused him: the assimilation rate. He clicked on it, but a window popped up. It mentioned that access was restricted. The more I tried to understand, the more questions arose. For now, the most important thing was that he needed a real weapon. He couldn't rely on the mercy of pain for 30 seconds every time. This meant he needed a sword that wouldn't trigger the grace. Luckily, He knew there'd be a series of exams next month, and the reward for finishing the training was a sword called Murasame. This was a B-rank Beyblade, and mastering it would be enough for him to graduate the academy. Its size prevented the sword god's blessing from activating, so he could use it as his main weapon. In the end, he would have to do more than he wanted. Just then, someone called out to him, and he turned to look. With her teal hair, it was clear who she was. A pretty good-looking girl said this place belongs to her. Our boy just stood there staring at her blankly, not knowing what to say. He stood there, frozen to the spot. The girl said something, yelling at the man to get out of the way. Look at this attitude. He stood there thinking about how unreal that poor otaku girl looked. Whenever he saw her, his mind would blank for a split second without him even realizing it. He was about to get up, but she told him he didn't need to leave and just to sit by her. The girl was beautiful, sure, but she wondered what this nonsense was all about. It was about the bank belonging to him. After all, it was a public place, but he decided to avoid all conversation to stay away from the story's heroine. Still, the girl looked so battered that he couldn't help but glance at her, thinking how charmingly beautiful she was. Out of nowhere, she looked up and said she loved sitting there because the stars are best seen from that spot. The caught-off-guard bro didn't know what to say. He was literally struggling with his weak social skills. He started to wonder if this girl was really Abel, the hero famous for being the granddaughter of the sword sage. The girl turned to him and asked if he used a sword too. Our boy was surprised at how he knew this. The girl explained what her grandfather told her. His grandfather said there was a distinct look in the eyes of swordsmen. This made Kangi worry for a moment that his secret had been revealed. Kang was still confused. The girl's colorful hair, those antenna-like tufts, and sharp, upturned eyes. Was this just Kangen's imagination, or did the girl actually look like a bug? Abel asked if he wanted to hold his sword. So Kenjin confirmed that he knew who she was. Kang was confused because he didn't think the girl suspected him. But he found it strange that she asked, because everyone at school knew who Abel was. He confessed he knew her after a fashion. When she replied that she didn't know him, Kenjin grew even more confused about her intentions. Abel mentioned that this was a bit cliché. That he knows her name, but she doesn't know his. Unwilling to get involved, Kang asked why he should reveal his name to someone he just met. He explained that it's always good to know people, since they could be a spy for the Demon King after all. He also added that it was strange for him to be alone at night in a place where he usually trains. At that moment, Kang felt threatened as the girl placed her hand on her sword. Quickly turning the situation around, he suggested she might be the actual spy, but the girl explained she was simply training. Kang said he did that too. Intrigued, Abel asked what kind of training had left him so calm. She said there were breathing exercises. Kang noticed a few wounds on the girl's hands, but she realized and tried to hide her arm. Kang paused for a moment, appreciating the girl's dedication. Abel confirmed this, explaining that people don't understand the burden of carrying Siegfried's bloodline. He explained in detail that things must be perfect, because any sign of weakness will draw in opportunists. Then she mentioned how she couldn't be the top student this year. In a rare moment of vulnerability, he admitted defeat for the first time. Nonetheless, with a smile, she admitted it was a kind of relief. But he wondered who defeated him and made it clear that he wanted to win next time. Kang asked if he should take this so seriously. He said it was a matter of pride. Abel begged his grandfather to find out who that person was, but all he learned was that they weren't even in his class. The worst part was that this person had only just joined the school. Realizing he said too much, Abel apologized. Saying he shouldn't talk about such things with someone he just met, the curious Kang asked why he was telling him all this. He said it's because it looks weak. He emphasized that the family motto is to be tough on the strong and kind to the weak. Kang finally understood the reason for her kindness, and realized she saw him as a loser. Now it made more sense why it was so hard to get close to this complex girl in the game. Kang said he was tired and it was time to go. He wished her good night, but she turned and asked when he planned to tell her his name. The scene moves to the classroom. Life at the academy was calmer compared to Kangen's. As expected, Chloe quickly made new friends and blended into the class, while Kang avoided eye contact. Every time the girl gets close to him, the other friends were giving him judging looks. But Kang didn't care about those cold stares, probably because he was a special student. Besides, he wasn't the only special student in the Tiger class this year anyway. Kang was glad he ended up in this class. Star and Dragon at the start of the term. The classes would usually start forming political groups. Even while playing the game, he found this nonsense frustrating. He was glad he didn't have to deal with this. Walking with her phone and thinking about what to eat that day, she received a black card from the media outlet itself, along with an apology for forgetting to give it earlier. It looks like this was his personal card. Kang was stunned. So this is what it feels like to be a wealthy eater, he thought. Still, the best part for him was that he hadn't disrupted the flow of events up to this point. If it continued at this pace for the next 3 years, the future he imagined would become a reality. It was hard to understand why he was so optimistic, considering the war looming ahead. Later, a professor was teaching a class. It's about a war from 700 years ago. The war was between the Demon King and the hero Draken. After the war, Draken decided to raise a new generation of heroes and founded the academy with his 7 disciples. The professor emphasized this. That this topic will be on the exam. Kang, who had played the game many times, almost fell asleep. He remembered this part well. The lesson focused on the founding lords, Draken, who fought the demon commanders. For over 20 years, he had led humanity against the entire demon army. The commander lost his arm in a battle with Draken, which left him unable to fight again. At the end of the first war, the battlefield turned into a bloodbath, and there was no clear winner. However, this resulted in a ceasefire between demons and humans. That was when Jack founded the academy. The professor reminded them that all this happened 700 years ago, and it's the reason for today's peace. Students started to wonder if such a war could happen in their own generation. Kang knew the answer very well. The 700-year peace was about to end. Telling media would have been wise, but Kang had no idea what the consequences might be. Although he often seemed like the type who wanted to leave the academy as soon as possible, Abel was also the first person to awaken an anomaly. Thanks to Lord Shire. He was the first of 7 heroes who stepped forward to protect the students. Kang hadn't played the game much, but he knew what it was. What happened to his stomach? It was gone. He was the first one sacrificed by the Demon King. Our boy wished he didn't know this was going to happen. The professor thanked everyone as the class ended, and reminded them to prepare for the exam in 2 weeks. Meanwhile, students started leaving the classroom. They were talking about something excitedly. Kang wondered what was going on without getting up from his desk. That was the moment he remembered. It was May 5th when she took a look at the phone case. The students by the door were saying it was impossible for that person to come to their class. And they were probably saying your destiny was the star class. Kang already understood what they meant. On May 5th, this world's so-called protagonist arrived. Leon von Reinhardt. With him came the beginning of the end of 700 years of peace. Kang already hated this guy with his ridiculously cliché face. Just like in the stories, all women were falling in love with him. Kang wished for this to be an R-rated story where handsome guys like him usually die young. Leon's charisma had already reeled her in. Sword Saint Rachel, Bao Saint's daughter Sakuroil, and even Dear Abel, the main character's party members were extraordinary. The guy was unbearable. But by the grace of miracles, he was the first to join the team for the hero's journey. Actually, joining the team was an understatement. People were being forced into war. Kang is also the hero of valor. He knew he could only defeat the Legion's first commander. It was hard to imagine how powerful the real Demon King could be. He wondered if this was one of those ridiculous stories where the main character loses in the end. Leon greeted the students with a bright smile as he passed by. But then she looked aside and noticed Kang. And that it was grinning back at him. Kang sensed something was off but reminded himself what the gift of miracles was capable of. He was sure the protagonist would handle everything. After all, Leon had that dependable aura, as if he could solve any problem. Suddenly something caught Kang's attention, and the scene shifted to the practice hall. He was swinging a sword there. Since it's a longer sword, the sword god's blessing didn't activate. This allowed him to train without being disturbed. He desperately needed to improve at least the basics of his swordsmanship. Just now Rachel went up to him and asked if she'd done something wrong that day. Kang was nearly driven mad, but he didn't want to prolong the matter, especially since they have to spend at least a year together. He simply said everything was fine to keep the peace. The girl felt relieved when she heard this. But Kang was terribly confused as he tried to figure out his identity. I won't even mention how he can use a sword even while unconscious. The look on his face was like a plea for help. A deadly intent radiated from his sword. If it came down to pure killing, he was undoubtedly more dangerous than those demonic brothers. Rachel apologized. About what happened that day, he asked if he could make it up to you with another dinner. Though his cooking skills aren't as good as theirs, he promised to do his best. But Kang remembered his sword swing vividly and hesitated. The problem was that she almost seemed to glow while begging. It was hard to refuse, but he couldn't help imagining it. Waking up sliced in the fridge tomorrow morning, right at that moment, an idea hit him. She asked if she could ask him for a favor instead of dinner. Rachel looked confused, and Kang said it was something only she could help with. Blushing, she asked what happened. Kang asked him to teach him swordsmanship. Back at the gym, Kang realized he urgently needed an instructor to teach the basics. Chloe with a sword in her hand was absolutely terrifying. Every night before bed, Kang watched YouTube videos on how to survive a yandere. When Chloe arrived cheerfully and asked when she had arrived, Kang was ready. He said he just arrived. Chloe said she's waiting for him, and even arrived early, around 6:30. Confused, Kang asked why they arrived so early when they agreed to meet at 8. He already knew she was a little crazy. The girl looked at him innocently and asked if something was wrong. For a moment, Kang found himself staring at the girl's abs. Finally, he understood why it was so powerful. Chloe handed him a sword and asked why they weren't using their truths. Kang is dead. What kind of person practices with a real sword anyway? Chloe explained it was just a practice, so they should use wooden swords to avoid getting hurt. She smiled sweetly and said how kind he was for not wanting to hurt her. Gripping the hilt, he swung the sword, making a sharp whistling sound in the air. Kang broke into a cold sweat, wondering how someone could slice through the air so cleanly. He realized he had to be careful, knowing even a wooden sword could shatter a skull. When he checked the system, he confirmed that everything is fine for now. The sword god's grace had not yet been activated. The only thing that confused him was the synchronization value. While he examined the system, Chloe called out and asked if something was wrong. Only then did Kang fully realize that he was the only one who could see this system. Turning to him, she said, "It's my first day today, so maybe you could go a little easy on me." Kang got ready and asked if they could start. In his past life, he had always been someone who valued practical action. You know the saying, seeing is believing. He knew that to master any field, sacrificing flesh and blood wasn't enough. One had to be willing to give their entire being. All the progress he made at the academy came from his ability to observe himself and learning how to fix itself. He noticed that her hands were sweaty and her posture was poor. It reminded itself that the essence of swordsmanship is to strike your opponent with precision. At that moment, Chloe lunged at him. It looks like he wasn't quite ready, as the sword's tip was already near his neck. For a moment, it wasn't clear if it missed him or grazed the girl's cheek. Panicking, she yelled at him and asked why he wasn't going slowly like he wanted. Chloe shifted the sword to her other hand and prepared for another attack. Kang managed to block it, but the force of the blow sent his arm flying up and left him shaking. After being blocked, he confidently decided to try a counterattack. Chloe was already in the air. He started to wonder how she got even faster with every move. Maybe his first attack was just a test. He blocked it again, but the blow cracked the wooden hilt, and Kang was pushed back. Chloe continues the onslaught, and while Kang seems to hold his defense, the power of those blows makes him fear for his life. Worse still, he couldn't find an opening for a counterattack. Suddenly, his wooden sword shattered. She apologized, saying she didn't mean to hurt you, but admitted she didn't think you were this fragile. Then Chloe froze. The sword breaking shortened its length, and that was the condition for the sword god's grace to activate. The system has begun changing Khan's personality, reducing his humanity, and activating the fever. Chloe instinctively flinched visibly. Khan was terrified as he was engulfed in a dark aura. The system announced the loss of humanity. Suddenly, the scene changed. Khan found himself standing in his old kitchen under a spotlight. Confused, he wondered where he was and whether it was all just a dream. He was holding a fish and remembered he had to prepare it. He thought he should get back to work. Maybe your chef should have used the Chinese cleaver. He wondered how much time had passed, but the system intervened and said he couldn't select that item. Khan's confused. He tried another knife, but the system rejected that one too. Once again, his only option was the sashimi knife. He reluctantly feared the system's pain, yet felt right holding the knife. He even felt refreshed. He didn't know what was controlling him, but declared it was time to create a masterpiece. He'd activated. Meanwhile, Chloe was shouting his name, asking if he was okay. In the middle of the haze, Khan started pacing back and forth. Then he vanished in a flash of blue light, and reappeared right in front of Chloe. The girl barely managed to block in time, but the impact sent her flying. Coughing up blood, Chloe slammed hard onto the ground. She noticed Kang transformed into a completely different person in just a few seconds. To be honest, you couldn't blame her for being a Yandra after this. Kang was acting just like one of those crazy main characters. Kang attacked again and Chloe narrowly escaped. He was struggling to get up. He couldn't believe he was blown back by a single blow. He could barely stand and was questioning what happened to Sehanmea. He couldn't understand. He couldn't understand why she was acting this way, but he knew they had to stop the fight immediately. Chloe begged him to stop, but Khan, under the system's influence, kept attacking. He knew he couldn't dodge the next blow and started begging for it to stop. Back to Kang's mental world, he's a chef version. He was stunned. It was his first time seeing a fish slip through the cuts. The fish was making lots of noise, and the weirdest part was it seemed to be talking. He listened carefully and realized the fish was saying his name. Sanma. Looking at the knife, he remembered it was Sanma. Suddenly, a student version of Kang. It appeared in the kitchen. At that moment, he realized who the fish actually was. It was Chloe, begging him to wake up. The sword narrowly missed him and stuck into the wall. Khan barely managed to let go of the sword before it hit him right in the head. Chloe opened her eyes in surprise. He hadn't been shot. Suddenly, Khan pulled her toward him by the waist. The setting looked perfect for a kiss. But that would make him a dangerous creep. Luckily, he wasn't that kind of guy. He said it would be better to call it a day instead. Chloe asked if you were okay, but she said Kang just gave a careless thanks for the workout and left. This maniac almost killed him and just walked away. After a few words. Walking back to her room, Chloe thought about the test day. He realized Kang's talent was more than just raw power. It carried a strange energy. This wasn't a simple skill. It was as if driven by pure instinct, and though it seemed to activate unconsciously, Chloe didn't stand a chance against him. Worse yet, he was using that broken sword. He always knew Kang was strong, but he didn't expect this much. Suddenly someone spoke. He noted that you seemed in a good mood. Chloe's expression changed instantly. Standing across from him was Nox. The sophomore Chloe calls her older brother. Nox asked if he's been slacking off since he entered the academy. Chloe's like, "Are you only hanging out with losers?" And then she told her not to say that to anyone else. Nox smirked, noted Kang's name, and warned that his family would take him out if he kept hanging around him. Chloe bowed her head and walked away, saying they couldn't handle Kang even if they all attacked at once. Their talk was short, and Chloe was already gone, but Nox stayed there, thinking about the name he just heard. Meanwhile, Kang was starting to realize that the power he received wasn't actually a blessing or a divine gift. Actually, it was more like a curse. Determined to stop relying on the sword god's grace and dangers, he was motivated to find new equipment. But this strange power seemed to take control of his body against his will. When he lost control, he didn't just feel pain. He felt completely free, Yet deep down he knew he was controlled like a puppet on strings. The voice kept provoking him. Cut more, cut deeper, destroy everything. He lost control for a brief moment. He lost all control of his body, but regained his senses when he heard Chloe's desperate cry. He had seen fragments of the other world and broke the spell by letting go of the sword. His body instinctively understood that if he didn't drop the knife, he would lose himself forever in that moment. Ironically, the Yandere girl who once wanted to kill him was the one who brought him back to his senses. In a way, Chloe was annoyed that the power activated because she broke the sword, but of course, she also felt grateful. He left there in a hurry, but the question remained. How could he prevent this power from activating again for the rest of his life? This so-called blessing of the sword god was actually more of a curse than a gift. Kang began to understand what you traded. That you gave pieces of your life to activate the effect. In this world where he didn't belong, he was like an alien. He didn't ask for much. Just a simple, normal life. He could handle it when minor accidents happened, but now he finally noticed something deeper. There was something inside, something trying to take over your mind. What he received was not a blessing. It was a curse intended to consume him. After all, this was the art of inverted sky. 3 days have passed and we're back in class. A kid with purple hair tells Chloe she needs to see something. But he's changing the subject. He says he'll check it later. But at that moment, only about the hook, however, he's worried because it didn't come today. The only thing he heard when he knocked on her door before were groans of pain. He was afraid she'd hate him for breaking the door. That's why he just walked away. But in that moment, he realized how much he loved watching her from afar. While he's lost and fighting, "Oh girl, you're a total mess, just get out of here." He thinks about how many times he's secretly watched her, how he's lost count, and how he's always kept it low profile so she wouldn't think he's some annoying girl. Then she admits she misses the kid. We jump forward one more day. Wow, it's already been 4 days. Time flies. The teacher tells everyone to be quiet. They're asking if they only came to this prestigious school for show. Since it was raining today, they were going to study inside instead of training outdoors. However, the teacher keeps noticing Kensia's absence, but because he trusts the boy, he would wait for him patiently. Then he tells everyone to start studying. After a while, the teacher hears someone coming and asks who has the guts to dare to be late. But then, startled, a silhouette approaches. Chloe calls out to him and asks what happened. Wait a second, where's our kind-hearted Khan? The kid has turned into a total rebel. The girls love this. And the teacher tells them not to worry and to take their seats. Everyone wonders if he was truly her previous special admission student. He wonders if it's his student. It looks much different now. Someone even says he looks more handsome. I told you girls like bad boys, Khan. He sits in his chair with a face screaming that he hates the world. After a while, class ends, and everyone heads to the cafeteria for lunch. Chloe goes to talk to our boy and asks what happened. He probably wants to know what's going on, but he just says it's nothing serious. She says you haven't been attending for a while and she's worried. Did he have something to do with that duel? She turns to him, her face beaming, saying she's just a little sick. But he thanks her for worrying about him. The boy's heart flutters. The girl is a bit surprised and says she's glad to hear that. They're surprised and say they're glad to hear it. Our boy probably knows she doesn't believe that excuse. Actually, what she went through these past 3 days was a kind of extreme withdrawal. He was mentally exhausted and couldn't even leave his room to eat. She was bedridden, praying for the contractions to stop. This time, the price of using that broken weapon was pain far worse than before. But that wasn't the only thing. When he looked in the mirror, he realized he was just skin and bones, and even his hair had started turning white. He was sure this was the price he paid. That was the price for sticking your nose into God's damn business. At that moment, he notices Chloe is feeling guilty. It made sense, given she was thought to be the last person to see him before all this. So he decides to help her to keep her from blaming herself. So he asks if the dinner invitation is still open. The girl is so surprised she can't hear him clearly and asks him to repeat it. Just as he's about to answer, the girl suddenly jumps for joy and says, "Of course," looking so happy. Our hero is glad the girl seems to like the idea. The girl tells him she'll make whatever he wants to eat and asks what he'd like. She says she wants to eat fish again because she loves it, and it's been a long time since she last had it. Because he threw up the last time he ate. Just as he's about to explain why, something red suddenly grazes his neck. Looking to the side, he sees a plant emitting some kind of energy, and wonders what the hell it is. Then he looks the other way and sees it. That guy, Noxo, just stands there with a smirk like he's about to cause trouble. Chloe looks frightened. Kang immediately asks the girl if she knows him. He glances at the guy standing there, and they lock eyes. Our hero moves toward him without delay and, instead of just standing there, asks him to speak. The man keeps looking at her. It keeps staring with glowing red eyes, and Kang wonders what it is. Meanwhile, Chloe tells Kang not to mess with this person and orders him to go to Nox. Kang Jama notices that despite the girl's angry look, her trembling voice betrays her fear of this man. Nox says the kid is no good and asks Chloe if she's really going to break the rules for him. The girl says she no longer has anything to do with the Cecilia Audier clan, but Nox retorts. He says the blood on their hands will never be washed away, and since she was born into this family, she will always be a part of it. Our hero quickly realizes the girl is being treated like a rebel and is dealing with some sort of family drama. Nox tells her to get rid of that thing and return to the clan. But Chloe yells at Kang so he won't say anything. The last thing Kenjin wanted right now was more trouble. This makes him wonder about the Audier clan. He remembers them as a dark group appearing mid-story, in terms of pure power. They were weaker than other hero clans but unrivaled in assassination. Moreover, every member of this clan was incredibly strong, thanks to the harsh regime they imposed on their children. They had all been raised as deadly assassins since childhood. Considering all this, he thinks Nox is the normal one. The strange thing is that despite everything, Chloe is so cheerful. The look on the man's face showed he wouldn't hesitate to kill if necessary. Kang is certain that the Audiers are professionals at eliminating enemies to maintain order. Though ours isn't against killing people when necessary either. Oh yeah, coming from the guy who wouldn't even hurt a fly. In the three-dimensional world, Kang notices Chloe trembling beside him. What is this? The girl bites her lips until they bleed. Kang realizes Chloe just wants a normal life, but it's like both he and she are cursed. Getting a sword blessing was impossible for someone born into the Audier family. He was doomed to live a life filled with senseless murders. But he is no hero, has no desire to be one, and never will be. Yet he still can't save the world. Doesn't mean it can't save a single life. Then he asked himself why he did it, and made his decision. He'll protect Chloe and settle this business with Nox. Even if her power is a curse, she won't let it turn her into a loser. He asks if the guy's name is Nox, remembering his futile efforts to escape his damn blessing. People always say that there is no heaven for those who try to escape. Since escape was impossible anyway, he decided to move forward. Chihen meant sword, and Ma meant demon. Wow, with a name like Demon Sword, his family must be so emotionally mature. Nox says he's going to tear him to pieces now. In another room at the academy, the teacher is lost in deep thought. He knows something happened to dear Chihen, but the boy's expression was completely emotionless. Just then, another girl enters the room and teases her. By saying you'll go bald with a grumpy face like that. He snaps at her for talking about baldness, and she apologizes. At that moment, she gets a call and looks anxious while asking what happened. He wants to know what this subspace stuff is all about, and asks which students are trying to get involved in this conflict. Later, he learns that this is a showdown between Kang Sahanma and Nox Oduyer. A door opens, revealing the subspace arena being prepared. 15 minutes were left, and Kank didn't expect this. That it's so easy to set up. Midya said she'd help if that's what he wanted. But since this wasn't real, he had to fend for himself. The real world. He wouldn't take any physical damage, but mental fatigue could still affect him. But he was confident. None of that mattered as long as he kept winning. He can already hear the chaos outside and never imagined there would be so many. that there would be interest in this fight. It feels very ironic to him because, a short while ago, his dream was to be unnoticed. Chloe was by his side, crying out his name. Our boy knows the girl blames herself. So he tells her not to think it has anything to do with this. With him. He even thanks him for lending this great equipment. There's a brief silence before she admits that Nox is actually really strong. Ours says he's sure the girl is at least as strong as he is. The girl explains that the situation isn't quite the same. Because Nox is a unique genius in the family's entire history. In its entire history. He was already reaching the pinnacle of the dark arts. Kang found all these grand titles embarrassing. But the game was always like this, so there was no point dwelling on it. Now that you're involved in this, there's no escape. He remembers his teacher once saying he was condemned to use a sword for the rest of his life. What he didn't expect was that he'd be doing the same thing in this reincarnation too. The announcement signaling the start of the duel echoes. He stands up and tells Chloe he's going out. When the girl looks hesitant, he calls out to her to reassure her. By telling her not to worry, because the world is full of geniuses, and that's exactly why he'll win. Wow, are you trying to say you're a genius too? So, good for you, Protagonist. The door slowly opens, and he covers his face. What on earth is this in subspace? This is an arena, but there's a massive crowd watching. This isn't just a simple one-on-one duel. Our boy feels like a gladiator in the Roman Colosseum. He spots something in the distance and wonders why even the elite are here. Seriously? And here comes our lovely news, with our protagonist putting on a show. Ours wonders if these people have nothing better to do than watch him fight. Nox suddenly appears, already fuming. The kid's about to pop. At this rate, he'll end up dead at a young age. Nox asks Kanga if he can tell the difference between courage and arrogance. He wonders why you're here with such a pathetic excuse for a sword. The dark aura starts moving toward Kang. Kang immediately realizes that this guy intends to kill him. Kang says a good fighter never blames his gear. Nox is about to lose it, but he decides to finish the job quickly. A crow appears behind him, announcing he'll start by cutting out Kang's arrogant tongue. Kang notices the guy's gear is freaking overpowered. Of course he's relying on that pimp sword. Wait, what? The man is using a Soul Rain sword. A level 1 weapon. This is straight up cheating. Kang is clearly impressed, but not surprised. It might be absurd for Nox to show up with such gear, but Kang came prepared, too. He's using a chef's knife he swiped from a closed kitchen. The drone approaches and announces the start of the fight. A blue light shines, and the drone wishes for the hero's blessings to be with them. The two face off. Kang is activating it now. It summons blessings that suppress pain and the blessing of the sword god. The boy's eyes are turning white, as if he's possessed by a demon. The crowd starts whispering. Was that real? They're confused. They're saying this should have been an easy fight. But the fight starts with a barrage of attacks, and the audience notes they are faster than expected. Meanwhile, the blonde bombshell can't believe that former loser actually knows how to fight. Kang parries another blow, and Nox tries one more strike. One of Nox's attacks hits the ground, sending purple slashes toward Kang. But the attack seems to have missed completely. As Nox leaps into the air to activate the three-headed crow technique, Kanga challenges him to dodge this move as well. Our hero, for a moment. He stands still and is suddenly covered in a purple aura. Nox, Kang is sure he's dead now. But Kang turns into a blue blur. A second later, he appears on the other side of the arena, completely unscathed. The crowd begins to say the kid is holding up well despite Nox's powerful attacks. Abel's confused, wondering how Kang, a new academy recruit, could stand up to someone like Nox. Even worse, Kang dodges everything effortlessly, as if he's not even trying to fight. Nox remembers Chloe warning him that Kang was no ordinary man. Even with the crow technique, nothing happened. At least Kang was just running away. Maybe they were someone who specialized entirely in agility. For now, Nox decides to stay cautious and wait for the perfect moment. The problem is, Kang's rage only grows every time he sees him fighting with kitchen knives. Suddenly one of Kang's knives drops, and Nox wants to know what the hell Kang is up to. Kang extends his arm, holding the remains of the knife, which even has small flower decorations on it. He points the knife at Nox, who is completely stunned. Nox is stunned, and Kang tries to figure out why he's frozen in that position. Still, if Kang plans to bet everything on a single strike, Nox decides to use all his power in the next attack. Nox, Hong starts bragging about the rain blade. But in the blink of an eye, Kang vanishes, leaving him stunned in the middle of the attack. Our hero thinks all he's ever wanted is to live a comfortable life. He never wanted to stand out. He preferred to blend into the crowd as much as possible. But since she realizes there's no escape, then she might as well just cut through everything perfectly. Wait a minute, there's an arm flying in the air. Looks like someone got disconnected. Before poor Nox even realized what was happening, Kang was already behind him. The audience watches in shock, their jaws dropping in disbelief. Meanwhile, Kang vows to use everything at his disposal, whether it be a blessing or a curse. Now, it was time to say goodbye to the idea of a peaceful future. I thought our boy would take it slow, but another sword strike lands and Nox looks terrified. Oh no, now his head is gone. I thought our protagonist was going to be the calm and collected type, but out of nowhere, the kid turned into a total punk. The arena shakes with a massive explosion, leaving everyone in shock. Nox lies motionless on the ground. Meanwhile, Kang calmly sheathes his utility knife. While Abel is in shock, his friend's eyes turn into hearts. Haha, who is he looking at? You guessed it. With that, the duel ends and the crowd erupts in cheers. Kang had expected this reaction. There was no turning back now. He did all this with a knife used for cutting fish. Though he already knew that driving a blade through human flesh was not a pleasant thing at all. It wasn't nice. At least Nox was standing right there beside him, safe and sound. This was proof of how impressive subspace is. Even so, Kang's psyche was in shambles. Kang Chihan admits that Nox truly is as strong and possesses as great a battle intuition as Chloe said. But his bloodlust made his movements too predictable. The drone flying overhead announces Kang Chihan as the winner in 26 seconds. Everyone's surprised when a freshman beats a sophomore. Kang is met with a surge of interest, but he knows there is no escaping it anymore. Since she was forced into this path, she decides to do her best. The only topic throughout the academy is the boy who took down an Odiner. Everyone is amazed at how anyone could be strong enough to defeat such a man. Meanwhile, Abel can't help but hear her name everywhere he goes. After what happened yesterday, this was inevitable. Noxon couldn't believe it when the hilt fell to the ground. He stood frozen, trying to understand how such precise swordsmanship was possible with kitchen knives. As the granddaughter of a swordsmaster, she had always been proud of her knowledge, but she realized how wrong she had been all these years. A memory flashes in his mind. That moment he arrogantly said he was curious about the person who could beat him. He remembers how eager he is to crush him next time. And that she's acting cute by saying she told everything just because she looked weak. Because he looked weak. Now he starts putting the pieces together, and wonders if he'll be this year's winner. It's literally the girl. About to burst and face turning red, he mutters that this damn guy is the stronger one. Now she'd want to know what was going through the man's mind at that moment. Abel wakes up with a start, and his blonde friend Rachel asks what happened. Abel apologizes. Says it's nothing. Oh man, you have a trauma related to blonde girls named Rachel. As people know, Rachel insisted. She asks if he's sure, but Abel insists, saying he just feels a bit tired. But Rachel notices something and starts making fun of him. Ask him what he's hiding, Abel says no. Did you forget your equipment at home? Abel refuses again. Maybe you just have to use the bathroom. Abel explodes and says shut your mouth. Then Rachel asks if it's about a guy. Abel instantly turns bright red like a tomato. And Rachel figures it out. He starts laughing, saying he never imagined the legendary Abel would get caught up in a romance. Stumbling over his words, Abel stammers to Rachel that it's all a misunderstanding and nothing romantic, but Rachel is already wondering who the lucky guy is. The man who managed to steal legendary Abel's heart. Rachel starts listing the options. She asks if it's Leon because he's handsome. But Abelyn's expression clearly shows it wasn't him. Rachel finds it odd that Abel frowns when her name is mentioned. Leon lets go and begins to wonder who else it could be, then asks. Or is it that special student from yesterday? The moment Kang says her name, Abel freezes, while the total psychopath Rachel enjoys it, claiming she's a genius at this. Abel takes her hand and announces it's time to go. Abel, of course, will want to know where. Rachel answers, to that tiger's class. He bursts through the door a second later, making his presence known. The guys inside would be completely stunned, drooling over the girl's beauty. They enter the room, but Rachel wastes no time. He climbs onto a table and shouts, "Where's that black-haired guy?" When scanning the room, someone says no matter the location, it shouldn't be on the table, but this girl is crazy. He brushes him off by saying he's too handsome for that, and the idiot actually buys it. Abel stands on the sidelines, looking terribly embarrassed. Suddenly, Rachel's face lights up with a perverse grin. "I found it!" he cries out. What's the problem? He must have noticed this. Chloe looks at Kang with hearts in her eyes. Rachel gets even more excited, saying this makes things even better. "What? Your shirt button." "I'm your friend, I'm not competing with him." Chloe was sitting quietly when suddenly a chill ran through her. Rachel walks over to him and plops herself onto the desk. Meanwhile, Kang begins to wake up, drooling. The rival warrior smirks and asks if you've woken up yet. When he doesn't answer, she asks if he's Kang Ji-won. Our boy Kang Ji-won must be completely confused. He's trying to figure out what Rachel is doing here. Pointing her finger at him, she says, "You're even handsomer up close." But for some reason, their instincts are screaming that this is dangerous. Suddenly Chloe grabs Rachel's arm and asks who she is. Chloe's face says it all. Rachel is now confused by this girl staring at her, and Kang finally wonders why his instincts. He realizes she's screaming. Rachel's attitude suddenly changes as she pulls out a dagger. A fight is about to break out in the middle of class. This is something Kangin has never seen in the game. Abel interjects and asks Rachel what she thinks she's doing. Rachel casually says she just stopped by to say hi. Abel looks just like him. He walks over, gently places his hand on Rachel's head, and tells her not to interrupt while adults are talking. And put that sharp thing down. But Chloe won't back down. Just die already. He shouts and lunges at Rachel. Rachel glances sideways, and red stuff spatters everywhere. Wait, no, this is just strawberry juice or something. It turns out Rachel effortlessly blocked Chloe's attack. He even mocks him, saying he's weak, puny, slow, and out of control. Wow, she really blew it out of proportion. Rachel tightly grips Chloe's arm. Abel shouts at her to stop, but she continues, throwing objects across the room. Chloe is floating in the air, but somehow she lands gracefully on her feet like an angel. Meanwhile, the guys in the room are loving this drama. The truth is, Rachel is from the Swordsmaster clan. A clan where brute force is the only legal tender. Your bro turns and asks if that girl is your girlfriend. Kang answers no. He notices Chloe isn't happy to hear this. But what can he do? It's a fact. She adds that we're just friends. While all this happens, he tries to understand what kind of chaotic situation he's being dragged into. Only then does Biz China realize that Abel is also here. He strangely asks why the two of them came to look for him. Rachel says with a smirk that it's Abel. He said he liked you, and I wanted to see it for myself. Abel blushes instantly and starts stuttering. When did I ever say such a thing? He starts talking nonsense. They try to explain themselves, but in the end, it does nothing but confuse everyone even more. She turns her back in shame and mumbles that it's a complete misunderstanding and she never wanted to come here. Kang says, if that's the case, without breaking his composure, you can go now. Rachel's harsh gaze softens slightly at Kang's tactless behavior. Apparently, she likes guys who reject her because she replies instantly. You're interesting. It's good to know you like interesting guys, but I'm not one of them. But that won't stop Rachel. He says don't do that. How about coming over to my dorm after class today? We'll watch Netflix. To make his intentions crystal clear, he speaks one word at a time. Chloe snaps in anger and yells, "Get your hands off Kang Jin!" Rachel bursts into laughter. She says it's funny Chloe thinks it's hers, but Abel has had enough. Rachel calls out, trying to regain control. Rachel stands up and adjusts her clothes. Alright, nice to meet you, Jama says with hearts in his eyes. See you later. He waves and leaves, making Kang wish everyone would just disappear. As soon as they turn their backs, Kang falls back asleep, but Abel pauses for a second. He looks back at her and oh no, she has that certain look. He's officially fallen head over heels for her. He quickly turns around and follows Rachel outside. Meanwhile, in the hallway, Rachel is lost in thought. She's thinking of Kang's cold stare. They realize there's a difference between someone being cold and that pure intensity in their eyes. When Kang looked at her, he felt like his throat was going to be slit. This encounter has far exceeded your expectations. It probably even gave you goosebumps. He only went there to play with her a bit, never imagining he'd run into someone like this. Finding exceptional warriors for breeding purposes is a priority for his clan. He begins to see Ken as a valuable resource. That Netflix invite could have actually worked, huh? He says it's no wonder he got stuck on Abel. Kang getting the invincible princess's attention. Then he suddenly apologizes. Abel brushes this off, saying Rachel should apologize to the actual students. Interrupting your lesson. But Rachel will clarify, I'm not apologizing for her. Unfortunately, I apologize for Kang. I'm the one who's going to enjoy it. Elsewhere, at the hospital, Knox has just woken up, muttering that he's going to kill that bastard. Until that fight, he was known as a genius among inspectors. His body had never known defeat, he reflects. He remembers sneaking into Kang's camp at night to kill him, but also the crushing majesty Kang exuded during their duel. Shoving a nurse aside, Knox storms out. He vows to mobilize all overseers to take Kang's head. In the end, he plans to take back Chloe, whose potential could even exceed his own. It was the perfect moment for Knox to attack. After all, night techniques were most effective at this hour. Kang was sure he'd show Geomaya who the boss was, but he flinched when he opened the door. Kang was there, casually eating an apple. Knox thought something strange was waiting for him, but no, Kang just looked at him and asked, "What is the upper class doing here?" Knox froze, not knowing what to say. In the end, nothing happened, and the scene skips to the next day. The next day, Chloe nervously bites her nails. Even though she was the one who drew her sword, our boy notices her disappointment. Clearly annoyed, Chloe starts muttering about whether Kang likes women with giant airbags. If that's the case, he'll have to kill that woman. Kang breaks his thoughts by calling out his name. Recovering, Chloe asks if he needs anything. Meanwhile, Kang. Inside, he hopes Chloe will lower her sword. Evan asks how Knox is doing. Chloe hesitates for a second before answering. He's in the infirmary. Kang finds this strange. It's weird, I don't remember hurting him. Chloe shrugs and says she hasn't visited him. But he heard she was taken there, despite having no visible injuries. But don't worry, I'm sure he's fine, she adds. Kang knows Knox isn't the type to break mentally from such an insignificant defeat. He can't help but hope the guy isn't planning something. With this in mind, he decides to ask Chloe, "Where is Knox's room?" Now we're back to the present. Knox is shaking in his boots in front of Kang Jin. Kang is quietly eating an apple in his room. Knox's trembling voice asks, Can I have an apple?" Kang looks at her, raising an eyebrow. And it states this. "Do you want it while I'm already eating?" Kang, completely unbothered, looks around and makes a comment. That's what his family says. Since they could give you a room like this all to yourself, he must be pretty rich. Still confused, Knox asks how you got in here. Kang doesn't answer. Instead, he reaches for his knife, which makes Knox tense. Did Kang come to finish the job? No, Kang takes the knife and continues slicing. The diamond with master precision. Knox Kangin couldn't help but admire this talent and wondered why he was so good at such an ordinary job. Like cutting fruit. Kang puts the neatly sliced apple on Knox's desk and says fruit helps if his digestion isn't great. Knox realizes he's been humiliated. His face contorts with rage and he grips his sword, ready to end this insult, but Kangin's next words root him to the spot. "If you even think about seeking revenge, I'll come after the entire Odeer family myself." Knox is shocked. Kang walks to the door, closes it behind him, and leaves without a word. Outside the room, Kang lets out a sigh, a wicked smirk spreading across his face. Referring to Nox, he mutters that you're just a candle he could blow out at any moment. He probably knows he ran it over. And the last shards of Nox's will. Of course. It was all a bluff. There was no way he could destroy the whole family. He tells his family in 30 seconds. Maybe he could have taken out a few by then, but he really wanted to avoid unnecessary bloodshed. Moving away, Kang thinks he feels like he's in the eye of the storm. This wasn't the plan, but he was getting used to it. It seemed this world was slowly driving him crazy too. At least for now, if Nox backs down, he won't have to deal with him anymore. But Kanyan's real issue is with someone else. That crazy girl the protagonist was supposed to approach first in the original story. He needs to think carefully about what to do next. With the upcoming competition near, Kang knows he needs to take it seriously. The reward, the legendary Murasame, is something he desperately needs. The only problem now is that winning this will take longer than 30 seconds. The exam involves defeating demonic monsters in teams of 5. The focus is more on teamwork than individual talent. But if she finds good allies, she can overcome this. Fortunately, Kang already knows the monsters will be D-level mermen. Unfortunately, he also remembers how disgusting they were in the game. Just imagine facing them in real life. At least they're not sirens. They may look nice, but those creatures are much worse. He remembers sirens being seen as evil people and mermen as just evil monsters. Compared to this, mermen are not that scary. Sitting on a bench, Kang thinks about how it's been a month since he arrived. A peaceful evening reminds him of that calm. The peace he hoped for when entering this world. It's been 700 years since humans and demons signed a peace treaty, yet minor skirmishes still occur. And there were big clashes here and there. For example, the Vastman dispute 50 years ago, 6th commander of the Legion. He broke the deal by claiming he resurrected the 1st Legion commander. Moments from the past flashed through Kang's mind. While media clamored for news, scenes showed Vastman punching a white-haired soldier, a younger version of the legendary hero appearing, carving through demons with his sword. Humanity had prevailed, giving birth to 7 heroes. But not without sacrifices, the result for both sides. It pushed to avoid further tension. But Kang remembers that moment of ridicule. It's absurd to call him the strongest of humanity. After only killing the 6th commander, Kang returns and wonders if this is the peace they fought for, the more he thinks about it. The 1st commander who sealed the 1st Legion leader Balar remembers Joka that much. And he knows that 4 years later, the demons will launch their 2nd attack, including the first appearance of the Demon King. Still, thinking about it now won't change a thing. Kang knows he needs to focus on his upcoming exams. It's gonna be a bit annoying, but he needs to find some allies first. What's the problem? The phone book is empty. He has no friends. At that moment, Dankider became quite famous at the academy. Maybe he can use this to his advantage. Since things have come to this point, he'll hire the right people and guarantee the highest score on this exam. Even if it's impossible to succeed quietly, he still dreams of a comfortable life. A week passes, and Kang is trembling with anxiety. Not even one person invited him to their group. She remembers how Nox sliced it, and wonders why no one reached out to her. It turns out everyone was deathly afraid of him. While looking around, he notices something strange. Just like him, Chloe is seen as an outcast and hasn't been invited to any group. Approaching him, she asks if he found a team. He admits he couldn't find it. Considering he used to have several friends, Kang finds this strange. Seeing this as an opportunity, he suggests she join him. He says we only need 3 more people. Chloe accepts without hesitation. A perfect fighter. That's why Kang is sure they'll be a great addition. Because he can only fight for 30 seconds each time. Chloe's worth 1,000 of him. Chloe beams with joy, but those moments are interrupted by someone shouting Kang's name. This is Rachel. He announces his return to play with him. Kang sighs. He is already dreading his return. When he asks why she is here, the woman answers. I just said it, didn't I? Rachel can't sit still. Mumbles something about the big man's arrival. Kang turns to her and tells it like it is. Tell Saad to come too. They're not in the mood to play games. Rachel is about to cry. He asks why it's so cold. Kang groans, asking him to stop calling her his Ji-yang. Rachel pretends she didn't hear. He claims he's a bit hard of hearing today. Then he slumps onto a table as if by accident. First, the airbags deploy. And says that you're a bit clumsy. Ignoring his antics, Rachel turns to Kang and asks if he has a group for the exam. Without thinking, Kang says no. Rachel's eyes light up and she invites him to her team. He even holds her chin. And sarcastically says, "Got you now." Kang pushes his hand away, completely unfazed. And she'll probably ask why he wants her when there are a dozen other suitors. Rachel answers with a smirk, "Because I know it'll be way more fun with you." Kang explains that he already has a group with Chloe. Rachel is great. Now he says they just need 2 more people. Kang is stunned. Doesn't she realize she's risking her own score by teaming up with him? Chloe burns. He seems happy with that idea. Back to Rachel, he says reluctantly. "All right, we're in your hands." Rachel claps her hands and declares there's no turning back now. Intrigued, Kang asks who else he plans to hire. Grinning, Rachel asks if he knows anyone named Leon. The blood runs cold. Our hero, trembling, wonders what he did in a past life to deserve this. All he did his whole life was chop fish for 30 years. And now, she was being dragged into the lives of Leon, Abel, and Rachel, the very people she wanted to avoid. Even if the girls are beautiful, they aren't the real problem. The problem was the main character, Leon. His presence could completely derail the future Kang Jin thought he understood. Kang thinks of retreating, but Rachel gives him no chance. Second, the moment he accepts, it locks him in by submitting the team registration. For the first time in his life, Kang really wants to carve someone up. Chloe notices his distress and asks if something is wrong. Kang Jin says ever since that hardworking girl entered the room, he hasn't quite been himself. Kang shrugs and says he's surprised to be taking the test with this group. Chloe speaks confidently to reassure him. He says no one in their group is stronger than him. Kang begins to reconsider the situation. He was the one who invited Chloe. That's why he couldn't let him down now. Besides, there really was no one better than the people in her own group at school. Maybe he just needs to be a bit more optimistic. Ask Chloe when the team meeting is. And that belongs to the giant blonde. It mentions he said the meeting is at 6 in the cafeteria. San decides why not and heads to a Starbucks with 2 items. Chloe taps her glass on the table. By shouting about how delicious your drink is. Kang is horrified that the drink costs $35. Mumbles to himself, "This is a robbery." Reluctantly, he gets a $7 espresso, the cheapest thing on the menu, and hates every sip. Suddenly his phone vibrates. It's Rachel calling, acting like she's already at Starbucks and asking when you'll be there. Kang tells her to stop talking and come inside. A few minutes later, Rachel appears with Leon behind her, apologizing for being late. Rachel scans the room. Kang notices Chloe and asks if they've been waiting long. But Leon is looking straight at Kang. Kang looks at her, right away. Notices Leo's orange hair. His first thought is this. This guy looks like a punk, I thought he'd be able. But apparently it was this guy. Leon steps forward, politely says nice to meet you, and introduces himself. Congratulates Kang for his fight against Nox. He says it's impressive. Watching him, Kang notices that Leo's tone strikes the perfect balance. Between intelligence and class, he's undoubtedly this world's main character. They all sit down and the introductions begin. Leon starts, introducing himself as a star student and their group leader. Kang feels a pang of jealousy. Leon is not only talented, but also incredibly handsome. Kang feels tired of everything. Already well known by the group, Rachel jumps into her own introduction. It passes the spotlight to the next person. A man introduces himself as a speed weapon from the star class again. Kang is unaffected. He thinks the name is so weird that there has to be a better explanation. Speed weapon even has a superhero tattoo on his neck. He's clearly obsessed. Next is Chloe. She introduces herself as Chloe. Audio from the Kirk class adds that he is here thanks to Kang. Rachel can't help but giggle and repeats the name Kang Jin. In a singing voice, Jama. Chloe frowns but quickly pulls herself together and says she's glad to meet everyone. Now all eyes turn to Kang. Keep the intro short. I'm Kang Jama. I'm in the same class as Chloe. The atmosphere in the room gets a bit awkward. Finally, someone opens a laptop, breaks the silence, and announces it's time to start the meeting. A hologram of an island appears on the screen. The leader explains that during the break earlier today, the professors gave some files to each team leader. The hologram is a map of the test site. They're going to teleport to the island, using Altuze technology, but the island itself is real. This means injuries caused by monsters there will be more real. Zooming in on the map, Leon notes that their team is assigned to the northern region. There are 3 other groups on the island, and their goal is to kill as many mermen as possible. With the number of creatures limited, Leon finishes his explanation and asks if anyone has any questions. Speed Weapon raises his hand and asks if there's a siren on the island and if they are at risk. Leon reassures her, saying the professors have already done extensive research. Then Chloe asks if the teams are allowed to attack each other during the test. Leon explains that since the goal is to kill monsters, sabotaging groups will likely be disqualified. Kang silently notes that, given her past as an assassin, this is disappointing news for Chloe. With that, the meeting ends and everyone begins to leave. Leon lingers to pack his things, leaving only him and Kang in the room. Kang stands up, intending to slip away unnoticed, but Leon calls out to him. Kang turns around, looking confused. Leon asks her where she's from. The question is simple enough, but Kang senses a deeper meaning behind it. Leo's gaze was piercing, and Kang struggled to find an answer. While the question itself isn't unusual, its timing and tone feel strange. Before Kang can answer, Leon apologizes, saying he was rude to ask so suddenly. Explains that he just got a strange feeling that they look alike. Kang becomes even more confused. Even though this world's official language is Korean, other cultures exist, and it's obvious to everyone that Kang is Korean. Why would Leon ask something like that? Leon drops it and tells Kanga to act like he never said anything, and leaves the room. But suddenly, Kang puts his hand on Leo's shoulder and stops him. Wait, said Kang, even surprising himself. Thoughtlessly, he asks, where are you from? Leon raises an eyebrow, but answers calmly, Jeremy. Then she gently lets go of Kang's hand and walks away, leaving Kang there in a state of confusion. Kang begins to question himself. Am I overthinking? What made you feel the need to ask that? Could Leon also be from another world, just like her? Even if the idea seems absurd, Kang can't shake the thought. Come to think of it, taking over the main character's body makes more sense than taking over some random side character. He glances at his sword, remembering how his instincts and judgment have sharpened. When you activate your power. Deciding to test this, he focuses on Leo's existence in this world. Almost instantly, he gets the strange feeling of a familiar voice whispering to him. The problem is, this feeling comes with a splitting headache that even the blessing of pain suppression can't quite ease. A moment later, he confirms what he already suspected. The Leon she meets is exactly like the one in the game. Even the original author couldn't have copied it so perfectly. But still, Leo's comment about them being alike lingers in Kang's mind, and he's determined to find the answers. Kang searches for Leon on the internet but finds nothing useful. While playing, she curses herself for never caring about the male characters' backstories. She tries to comfort herself that nothing will go wrong just because her path crossed with Leon's once. If it happens again, he decides to consult Medea. But Kang noticed something, and that's how calm he was. He started getting into situations he'd normally avoid. Maybe it's the effect of one of these blessings. When he opened the skill menu, he saw the assimilation rate had increased from 2.5 to 6.8. His mental fortitude and weapon mastery remained the same. Of course, his physical strength had increased thanks to training, and Khan was sure his weapon mastery would grow once he got Murasame. But what exactly was this assimilation that kept increasing the most? The only different thing he's done lately was his fights with Agnes and Sayla. Maybe that's what it was all about. Unfortunately, there was no way he could solve this on his own, and there was no one he could ask. Suddenly a new notification window appeared and stated that the blessing count has been reached and adjustments will be made. Khan was confused, but he noticed the pain suppression blessing had been increased from 30 to 40 seconds. Finally, he was reaping the fruits of his hard work. The feeling of leveling up was incredible. Time flew by during the physical training. He attended group meetings, practiced with Sayla, and tried everything to avoid Razel, who never left his side. With only one day left, Khan gave his all to training, slicing even the falling drops of sweat midair. The sensitivity was flawless. He was ready for the exam, feeling proud of himself. The day has finally arrived. A massive subspace gate stood before him. He gave off a completely different vibe than he did in practice. Someone called his name, and when he turned around, he saw the group. They were armed to the teeth and ready. Among them, it was hard to miss Rachel's massive weapon. It's their biggest weapon, though. It wasn't exactly a halberd. Razel, dangerous as always, teased her for being late. While Levent shouted for him to hurry, the speed gun, as usual, said nothing. Sayla greeted Khan. Khan greeted Nice as he joined the back of the group. As they walked, Khan was very impressed by everyone's equipment. Razel's daughter Zamrudogan was using a level 1 halberd, and while Alper didn't seem to have his famous ball man yet, his speed weapon was a strange tube-like. He wore the device on his chest. Khan glared at her. The speed gun turns in. What are you looking at? She snapped. Sayla explained that this is a healing support item. The most impressive part was that it was a top-tier work that must have cost millions. Khan thought this was great, but the speed gun warned him to stay away. Suddenly a voice announced that the exam had started. The professor addressed the group, saying, "By the look on your faces, you seem ready. But remember, you are still students, not heroes. Be careful and don't take unnecessary risks for a few extra credits. Anyone injured can withdraw at any time." Alper stepped forward, fired up the group, and said, "It's time. Let's do our best," he said. The day Khan had been preparing for finally arrived. But strangely, when Khan asked, Sayla seemed a bit down. He asked what was wrong. Sayla admitted she was nervous about the possibility of sirens appearing on the island. Khan reassured her, noting that the instructors had already cleared the area. He later learned that Sealand's homeland was one of the places most devastated by siren attacks in the past. The professor signaled for them to pass through the door. Khan tousled Sealand's hair and said, "Let's go." Blushing, she stuttered that there was nothing to worry about while Khan was with her. With that, they entered the portal. Suddenly Sayla heard Khan's name being shouted. When Khan finally asked if she was listening, she snapped out of her daydream. Confused, he wondered if he had lost his focus. The group was debating whether to call an instructor, noting they had no connection in subspace. One was already sprawled on the ground, and the real nightmare had begun. A siren appeared before them. Before that, the group had reached Scapuli Island. The journey made everyone vomit, except for Khan, who remained standing tall. A moved Leon asked how she was doing. Khan shrugged and said he never gets seasick. Before they could recover, the first merman appeared. Khan was surprised. It was much smaller than he'd imagined, and he felt like a fool for taking it so seriously. He thought the task might be easier than expected. Leon explained that these were the smallest mermen. They would get even larger as they approached the central region. Their first priority was to find Chloe, who had left the group for some reason. As they moved through the woods, Leon warned them to stay alert, sensing she was nearby. Suddenly, a red blur came down from the trees. Chloe landed in front of them. Leon Benoist asked why you're jumping from branch to branch like a monkey. Chloe admitted she was trying not to be noticed. The leader asked for the status, and Chloe reported a cave 500 meters ahead. The group stood before the cave, its entrance dark and ominous. Inside, dozens of glowing eyes reflected the firelight. It filled the cave. Rachel estimated there were at least 50 or 60. The group discussed their options if they destroyed this herd. They were almost certainly going to secure first place. But the risks and potential injuries were great. In the end, the decision was up to Leon. A few minutes ago, the group agreed that Chloe would be the one to explore the island. Speed Weapon had volunteered, but Leon pointed out that it wouldn't make sense for him to do it. Leon also assigned Kang as the rearguard to handle any threats from behind. He'd handle all threats approaching from behind. Far from feeling humiliated, Kang thanked Leon for this easy task. Meanwhile, Leon explained that he would stay in the center and only move forward if necessary. When Rachel asked where he was going, Leon explained his plan to her. Back on the island, Kang knew Leo had made up his mind just by his expression. Leon, Rachel's calling. He was the one tasked with starting the plan. He prepared his axe, charged it with energy, and threw it Spartan style toward the merman's fire pit. The rest of the group stared, mouths agape, wondering if it wouldn't have been better to just kill the fish. But before the merfolk could react, Chloe suddenly appeared, grabbed the halberd, and used it to cut down 2 of the creatures. Chloe remembered Leo's instructions: cut as much as you can. The answer, confidently, was of course. Then, Speed Weapon took out his flute and played a melody that activated a blessing, driving the mermen into a panic and making them try to escape. With the power of the blessing, Chloe began slicing through the creatures one by one. 11, 18, 22, 24. As Chloe counted, she took down dozens of them effortlessly. He thanked Speed Weapon for the support, and noted how much easier it made things. As Chloe continued her attack, she switched to her own weapon and activated her cat blessing, allowing her to slice through several mermen at once. A single strike took down 8 of them. When 2 more jumped on him from above, he handled them with ease. By then, Rachel had already killed 45 of them. But both women soon noticed something strange. They were heading toward each other. Rather, Chloe was lunging towards Rachel. Noticing this, Rachel moved toward Chloe. Just as the 2 were about to collide, a massive merman landed on their backs, jaws ready to strike. Both women ignored him and continued their assault, and in an instant, the creature was torn to pieces. Rachel commented, "You've gotten even faster." Chloe fought back, "She was mine." With that, they parted ways. Each went in opposite directions. Glad they didn't kill each other, Kang watched Leo take down a merman with a perfect shot. Leon turned to Kanga and said he seemed worried about them. "I was," Kang replied, "but it seems it was unnecessary." After all, the 60 mermen in the cave had already been finished off. After reminding Kanga to trust his allies, Leon said it was time to move forward. Kang couldn't help but be impressed. Leo's plan had worked perfectly. Of course, by plan, I mean only. It was just about sending an X for a while to slaughter everything. But Kang had to admit this was effective leadership. Tam Kang. As he thought about it, a blue flash burst behind him. Before he could react, the light pierced right through Leo's chest. Time seemed to stand still as everyone froze in terror. Kang turned slowly and gasped as he saw an evil siren at the source. Rachel screamed, asking why he was there. Early Gun wondered how this could even be possible. After all, the cave had already been cleared. The blood had frozen. This was supposed to be a simple mission. But now everything had spiraled out of control. Should they fight or flee? Getting away seemed impossible with Leon injured. Rachel said to switch to the quick weapon and contact the instructors. But he reported the rapid weapon communication system was cut off. This news made Kang's blood run cold. With no help coming from outside, panic was about to spread any moment. Taking a deep breath, Kang stepped forward and declared, "It seems I'm the only sane one here right now." Oh. Hisley Sila immediately ordered them to start treating Leon. He told Chloe to turn back, run, and warn the cadets. And he asked her to tell the instructors to evacuate. Chloe hesitated, but Kang pointed out it was nearly impossible to run away with Leon in that state. It was vital to warn everyone before more mermen arrived. After a brief hesitation, Chloe agreed and started running to follow the orders. Now furious, Rachel asked what Kanga planned to do. Kang told him and Fast Gun to handle the minor threats. She closed her eyes and mumbled, "Ever since I started cooking, I hate dealing with small fish. One can't show their true talent. It's just grunt work." Then he turned to the 2 of them and said, "Isn't it obvious? This is my specialty." Just as this video helps Mamre create better content for his viewers, make sure to activate that pesky little bell. I'm out too.